All right. So thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to be talking about surgically destroying cash value today, going through the nitty gritty with you. So thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully you take a lot of good notes. We're going to be really technical if we can with you today. If you master these things, you're really going to be able to have that confidence when you're out in the field. So Josh is going to go ahead and kick us off.
Good morning, guys. So we don't have any videos on YouTube that right now that have to do with breaking down policies. A lot of times when you open a policy, especially if you're newly licensed, it could look like Chinese. And in reality, it's actually a lot more simple once you do it one or two or three times. Then, it looks on the front cover of the policy. So like Shondell said just now, if you can learn how to do this, there should be no reason why you ever need to have a boss ever again in your entire life, right? We were just listening to a song about being a boss. Okay. Do you want to have a boss or do you want to be a boss? Because bosses know how everything works within their organizations. They know how everything works with their products. Do you want to have a boss or be a boss? You got to become a surgeon picking apart these policies. And what I mean by that is you got to master your craft. Okay. When you're doing appointments with people, I call them Sherlock Holmes questions. You got to learn how to be a detective and find the clues that lead to the money. And what I mean is we'll go through these questions. Actually, we have a cheat sheet that you can use during your appointment. But see, at some point you should not need the cheat sheet. You should be able to, on the street with somebody in 30 seconds, spark a conversation on life insurance and what you do in your business with them and figure out what kind of life insurance they have, if any at all. So questions like, do you have any coverage right now? What company, if so, what company is that through? What year did you purchase your policy in? How much do you pay per month for this policy? What company is it through? What's the name of the company? What type of policy is it? Do you know? Are you allowed to, did you ever get told you were allowed to borrow any money at any given point in time from this policy? Did anything like that come up? Were you told that this could last for your entire life, or maybe just a term, like a period, a term? Right? These are questions that I call them Sherlock Holmes questions, because it gives you didn't even got to see the policy yet, okay, to know what type of policy they have in order to, kind of break it apart. And competence leads to cash flow. Competence leads to cash flow. So the better you get at sequentially asking those questions, the more information you get, the more data you get. And the more data you get, it's like loading up a machine gun properly. And you don't want to unload your machine gun until you have enough data to properly give an analysis or a solution to whatever they may have, whether it's having nothing or whether it's 90% of the time having the wrong kind of life insurance. Now, some people may not have cash value life insurance. Some people may have term life insurance. If you run into somebody with term life insurance, that doesn't mean that you should just say, oh, well, good job. Good for you. Thanks for your time, and move on. You don't want to do that, because life insurance companies, the majority of them, make their profits off ripping off and screwing and tattooing people. So you better believe that if there's a way to screw someone over, they will do it, even if it's with term. Now, we'll do a totally separate training on different types of term life insurance policies out there. But the worst one that you could ever run into is cash value. And you got to be competent in asking those data collection questions to get some insight on what you're about to run into and break down. If you don't, it'll be like trying to shoot a target with a blindfold on your eyes. It's not gonna work. And you may end up breaking down the wrong kind of cash value life insurance, because there are two major types, and you don't want to break down the wrong one and get the client anxiety and anxious, and turns out they don't even have that one. So you guys are not going to automatically be masters at, these questions that you got to ask on the front end and breaking down the policies. Always remember there's 4 levels of competence out there. The first one is being unconsciously incompetent. Unconsciously incompetent. What that means is, hey, I suck and I don't even know I suck. And Josh Perez sucked. I was not the best at breaking down policies, cash value, none of that. Right? But that's where everyone starts. I suck and I don't even know I suck. Unconsciously incompetent. Secondly is consciously incompetent. So that means I now know that I suck. I now know that I suck. And I need to work on it. That's when you start to take the steps necessary to become better. I believe that a lot of you guys are consciously incompetent. Some of you are at the 3rd level, which is consciously competent. That means I am good, but I have to focus. I got to really try to, constantly be good. Consciously competent. Then the 4th level of competence is unconsciously competent. That's when you could be explaining how a policy works to a client and simultaneously be thinking about what you're going to eat for dinner that night. Or is your favorite show going to be coming on Netflix that night, or whatever? That is unconsciously competent. You're so good that you don't need to think about it. And you could, for your notes, use this word reflexive. When things become reflexive to you, assuming that you put in work and you're a hard worker, right? Because hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. When you become reflexive, assuming the hard work is there, you will become a cash cow. Okay? Because people do business with people they like and trust, and people trust others that know what they're doing. If they don't know what they're doing, okay, then why would somebody be okay giving you access to an insight to their financial situation? They wouldn't. But the more competence you show, the wider you expand what's called a value gap. Okay? The value gap is the distance between what the client thinks they know or might just know and what you actually know. And the wider you expand that gap, the more they trust you. The expansion of the gap is done through your competence level. Okay? So when you're looking at these cash value policies, each and every time you should in your mind be thinking, wow, I'm saving this family from certain death financially. That's why we use these words surgeon, and later on you'll see an interesting word used in the medical field for not doing the right thing, right? That Shondell's going to bring up. We use these words because ultimately a doctor saves people's lives medically, health-wise. We save people's lives financially, money-wise, because you could run into somebody that has had these products for 10, 20, 30 years. And a lot of times, if they've had it for that long, it's difficult to get them out of it because sometimes they're uninsurable at that time. They're too old. They have health issues, and it's hard to get them out of it. Even if they are healthy, you can't turn back the clock of time to make a better decision with on where to and how to invest your money. This is why we're saving people's lives, because if you can run into people sooner rather than later of them owning these cash value policies, you can redirect them off the course of certain death financially. But you can't do that if they've had it. I mean, it's difficult to do that if they've had it for 15, 20, 30 years. Okay? And the way to do that is to get on more appointments. Okay? But always remember, we are saving people's lives financially. And you'll see what I mean here in a second.
Awesome, guys. So with that, you want to master your craft. And so I know I showed this a little bit earlier when Josh was talking about the Sherlock Holmes questions. So you want to make sure that if you do not have a data collection, a copy of it that you can write on, or if you do it electronically, you can pull it up. Make sure you do get it, because Shaq and I and a bunch of other leaders, we did put in a lot of work to help create this cheat sheet for you. So when you're going through an appointment, you know kind of what questions to ask. We're going to go through these a little bit more specifically with you guys, but everything's laid out, all the things you should be asking. So you want to make sure you get into the habit of using this. And eventually, once you become unconsciously competent, you may not even need this sheet anymore. But it's always good to be a good note taker, write down information from your clients, so on and so forth. So make sure you guys start using that. Now, this is what Josh was alluding to earlier. You don't want to get hit with malpractice. Guys, I think every doctor in the world, this is probably their worst nightmare. If they mess up, they do something, whether it's through surgery, they give the wrong medication, whatever the case may be. If you guys don't know what malpractice is that's when you get sued, and it could be for millions and millions of dollars, depending on what you did. Sometimes malpractice causes death. And so with that, when we're talking about cash value specifically, there are two types of cash value, and you don't want to start tearing down one policy where it might be the other policy. So what I wanted to do is just really quickly break down the major differences. Josh and I are both going to go through policy examples. We're both going to go through exactly the points that you need to know about the two. But just from overlooking it, these are the things that kind of separate it. So the first type of cash value policy is called universal life insurance. So universal life insurance is also called flexible premium adjustable life insurance. exactly the same thing. So when you pick up a policy or you see a policy, someone says, I got universal, great. Someone says, oh, I got this thing, and they said that I got flexible premiums. Oh, it's probably universal as well. They're synonymous. Same thing, guys. So when you see that, there's a couple key things that are different in this policy from whole life. So the first thing is it has flexible premiums, right? So that means that you can pay a certain amount, you can change how much you're paying, so on and so forth, but that can affect the policy. The second thing is the death benefit, or the face amount, whatever, how much coverage that they have can either be level and stay the same for the length of the time that they have the policy, or that death benefit can increase. Then there is high policy fees usually associated. Then there's an annually increasing cost of insurance, right? So that's different from the premiums, guys. The cost of insurance talks more so about cost per thousand of coverage. So that increases in universal life yearly. And then there's also a huge issue called surrender charges. I'm going to go through all of those specifically in a second here. But those are things specific to universal life. Now, on the other side of things, when you look at whole life, the specific things about whole life is that it's level premiums. The premiums will always stay the same. Obviously, clear things like just like with any other policy, if somebody adds more coverage, their premium's going to go up. If someone decreases their coverage, their premium will go down. But if they have the same premium with whole life, the same coverage with whole life, the premium will stay level at all times. It also has a level death benefit. So the coverage amount is most likely going to stay the same. It doesn't grow or decrease. It doesn't depend on the cash value at all. That face amount death benefit stays the same. And then the coverage for whole life is usually up until age 100, right? When you compare that to universal life, the coverage may not go till age 100, and I'm going to explain that in a second. But at least with whole life, as long as somebody continues to pay for it, it should stay in force until they reach age 100. So those are the critical things. Like I said, we're going to break it down specifically with you. So make sure that you guys are taking a lot of notes. We're going to go through first a couple different points from each policy, the things that you want to look for. And then we're going to actually break down an actual policy so you can see where we're finding those things. So the first one that we're going to go over is universal life. So you want to attack this with precision, guys. So I talked about some of these things already, but first thing on the policy that you're going to look for always is the coverage amount. So with that, it could be 100,000, 50,000, 250,000. That's critical information because you got to know if the person is underinsured, overinsured, right? Those are some questions we asked throughout the presentation. So we need to determine that right away. There's usually a summary page which will show that information. Then specific to universal life, there's the type of death benefit. So it's either level or increasing. So level makes sense. That means it stays the same. Increasing means that your death benefit includes whatever has accumulated in the cash value. That's why it's called increasing. So synonymous to that is option A or option B. Option A is also the same thing as level. Option B is the same thing as increasing. Or it can also be option 1 or option 2. Option 1 is also level. Option 2 is increasing. So when you see those things, level A and option 1 is the same thing. Increasing, option B and option 2 is the same thing. So that's critical. You want to know their rating, like if they're non-tobacco, standard rating, preferred, so on and so forth, because that could be the differences when you quote somebody. You want to find their age. How old were they when they got the policy? Because it could be significantly different now. And the issue date, how long did they have it? The minimum versus guaranteed versus planned monthly premium. This is critical in universal life. Universal life, because it is flexible premiums, there's usually a minimum amount of payment that the company needs. then there's a guaranteed, like for a period of time, if the policy and they have a guaranteed premium, it means that during a certain period of time, as long as they paid that guaranteed amount, the policy will not lapse, right? So minimum is the minimum required on the policy, minimum that someone can pay monthly for that coverage and for that policy. Guaranteed is they need to pay this amount to guarantee that it won't lapse for a certain period of time. And then planned monthly premium now is the amount that they may choose to pay. So sometimes you may see on a policy, I'll show you guys that there might be different numbers. There might be a minimum number, a guarantee number, and then the planned monthly premium might be maybe in between those two or higher than those two. But the planned monthly is what they're actually paying. That's what's coming out of their bank account on a monthly basis. Now, stars. So this is important, guys. If you ever see a policy and you see a star, you want to make sure that you read what it says, right? And if you bring it up with a client, sometimes I'll say like, hey, I love using coupons, especially when we're going out like for food and you can get discounts, anything like that. They always have little stars on it. So right away, what do? We turn it over, we read it, and we're like, oh, shoot, I can't use it on this. I can't use it here. I can't use it there, right? Stars are very important. So in the policy, you want to make sure you read, if there is a star asterisk anywhere, that you read what it means, because that information is probably critical. So I'm going to show an example of that. And then